if you have a garden, right? We all know. I mean, you're not going to get the juiciest, ripest tomatoes or the most beautiful rose bushes unless you feed the soil, right? And so just, we want to have that kind of cognitive disconnect. We want to reconnect that and realize, well, we're just like, plants in the garden. Like we're not going to grow strong if we don't have, the ingredients to first nourish and grow, but also to keep out the weeds, right?
Thank you so much for joining us on another awesome episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner, and today is brought to you by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, and highly effective approach to optimize your wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency better based life in your hands and on your wrist. You want to stick to the very end because we have a wonderful giveaway you're not going to want to miss out on. But you're not going to want to miss out on one word that my next guest has to say because we're going to be talking about all things kids, kids' health, so all the parents, all the grandparents, all the people who've got kids around them that you care about, you're really going to want to listen to what this woman has to say because she is just a wealth of knowledge. She's a personal friend of mine. I've seen her speak before. She's brought me to tears and to applause and just, highly inspirational. So I'm super excited to share her with you folks today. Without further ado, let's welcome Elisa Song to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. I know we were chatting offline about just catching up on life, and it's been way too long. So I'm so excited to see you and talk to your audience.
It is, it has. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background, my dear. How did you get started? Why kids? The talk of gut biome and kids and all this fun stuff. I personally, I mean, it's sad to see what's been happening to these younger generations. And I
Yeah.
think it was when I was pregnant, the Time magazine came out and said that for the first time ever, life expectancy has gone backwards. So these generations that are being born now are not expected to live as long as their parents do. And if that's not a freaking wake up call, I don't know what is. So I love that you're talking about let's start talking about health when they're little, right? So
Yeah.
I commend you. So tell us a little bit, like I said, about your background, why kids, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. I always wanted to work with kids. I mean, I was the kid in high school who babysat any chance I could get. Like, just I didn't know what I would do. At first I thought maybe teacher. I come from a medical household. My mom was an OBGYN and frankly I mean she worked like a dog and I was like, I'm not doing that. So when I went to college, I mean, becoming a doctor was the last thing I had on my mind. So I thought teacher, I actually was really into policy. And so I actually then thought maybe law school. And so I was a political science major and I had an amazing, amazing lawyer as a professor, who inspired me to spend 2 summers at the Children's Defense Fund in Washington, D.C., which is different than the Children's Health Fund. This was a Children's Defense Fund that was advocating to raise the poverty level where families and kids qualified for Medi-Cal so that more kids could qualify. Sorry. It was to lower the poverty level line so that more
Oh,
kids
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
families could qualify, right? And I worked on teenage pregnancy prevention programs. I was, going around Capitol Hill, lobbying for different bills. And so it's an exciting world, right? But then I realized I wasn't going to be working with kids. And so I really had this moment like, wow, but it brings me joy to work with families and to get to know kids. And that's when I pivoted my senior year to be wanting to become a pediatrician. And it was just that convergence of coincidences. It was at that moment when I stumbled across a flyer on one of the telephone poles for this conference of the American Holistic Medical Association. Now, this was back in the late 1980s. So, holistic medicine wasn't even a thing. Well, first I'm dating myself, right?
I was gonna say you're an OG. I had
I
no
am an
idea.
OG. Yep. So, I mean, this idea of holistic medicine. I mean, I grew up in, around medicine, but I'm like, what is that? So I actually took myself as a junior to this conference, and I mean, my mind was blown. I heard from, a very young Andrew Weil, talking about this,
Oh,
right? Talking about this concept of food as medicine, and I'm like, and then there was Joan Borisenko and Marianne Williamson talking about mind body medicine. I'm like, what are these things? And so I remember I called my mom up on a landline because there was no such thing as cell phones back then, right? So I called her up and I said, Mom, I think I want to become a naturopathic doctor. And she's like, "What's that?" I mean, she never
Oh,
ever
that's
said, "Don't
good.
do that," right? She just was like, "What is that?" And everyone I told, they're like, "What is that?" And so it's not like I was discouraged, but I was never really encouraged. And whenever people would talk to me, they're like, "Well, maybe you want to go to med school then, right? If you want to do medicine." And so I ended up in conventional medicine. I have to say, I mean, I didn't see anything in conventional medicine that I wanted to do, during medical school or residency, but I am grateful that I had that very conventional training to
Mm.
know, the zebras and to know, how to manage emergencies. But again, in residency, I thought, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to work in the NICU. I don't want to work in the PICU. I don't want to work in the ER. I don't want to see 50 patients a day. Right. So then I came full circle and I thought, you know what? Why don't I go back to policy? And I actually went back to get my public policy degree at Berkeley. And again, same thing, flyer on a telephone pole, except I think this was on a table. But it was for the Food as Medicine conference. And I'm like, what is that? And again, this was now we're heading to was 2001. And I took myself there. I'm like, I'm going, I'm checking this out. And I heard from also a very young Mark Hyman
Oh my God.
talking about functional medicine and food as medicine, that food actually made a difference in our health. And so then I'm like, okay, this is it. And so from there, I just dived in. And it didn't stop at functional medicine. I mean, I do homeopathy, I do herbal medicine, essential oils, I do acupuncture. And so there's really, again, grateful for the conventional, training, but knowing that conventional medicine, the really is mostly for putting out fires, right? But not for prevention and seeing, as you said, how our kids are just getting sicker and sicker, and the number of kids with chronic health concerns that really once were considered adult health problems is too alarming. And so I get to practice in this way, and I love it. And then really, in 2016, this was 10 years ago, was when I kind of had this midlife crisis, and I was like, how do I kind of help more people because I mean my practice was too full. It was closed and I wasn't able to see new patients and so then I thought, well, why don't I start doing some online education? And that's how Healthy Kids, Happy Kids grew. I didn't know what Facebook was. I didn't know. I mean, I'm like, what is social media, right? So you just grow, and now I love, love, love teaching parents and practitioners because we have to get this message out more broadly that children can thrive, but not in the way we're living today and we need to empower our children to understand how to navigate this world without fear, without denying themselves life's pleasures, but redefining what it means to be happy and healthy in this world.
Absolutely. I love it that when you can educate and then they can come from an educated decision instead of
Hmm.
ignorance, right? What a total difference that makes. I too wanted to work with kids when I first started, when I graduated FDN because my kid had celiac disease and was diagnosed at the age of 2. And then he had, ADHD. He was diagnosed with all this other stuff, so I had a huge, right? I never wanted to see another parent and kids suffer the way that we
Yeah.
did. But the first parent I worked with, all this stuff. And I'm trying to go right off the bat. Okay, well, to be quite honest with you, darling, you're going to have to change the way he eats. do you mean I'm gonna have to cook for him? Was the words out of her mouth. This kid is suicidal, he's been in the hospital, and that's your reaction to,
Yeah,
oh yeah, absolutely we can help him, but we need to get real food into his system.
that's right.
And that was like when I knew, I'm like, oh my God, sometimes it's hard enough to get people to do lifestyle changes just one-on-one, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
working with one adult, let alone the family aspect, because then now you got to get both parents on board and,
Yep.
possibly
Yep.
siblings. Like, God bless you. Working with kids has got to be tough just only in that one aspect, if you know what I
I
mean.
mean, it is tough, but to your point, here's the thing, like when one child, has a health concern and we're shifting their diet or, trying to really focus on, different lifestyle tools, it is so important to make it a family affair. I mean, first, you don't want that kid feeling like, oh my God, why me, poor me, and then having their siblings blaming them for, oh, we have to eat this stuff. And second, because I've had so many siblings and parents, their health improves, even if they didn't think there was anything, quote, wrong with them, right? But I had one mom, when I put this little kid on a gluten-free diet, and this mom's like, I can't believe I woke up for the first time in decades without back pain. Right? I'm like, yeah, gluten causes pain and inflammation for many, many people. So, it's challenging, and yet it's also like when I get to see a baby, right, when they're first
Mm,
born and they're like this open book in front of them, it is a little daunting because you see what's ahead of them, right? What life can bring. But then, now, I mean, I've been practicing. I opened my practice almost 25 years ago. So I have a bunch of kids now who are in
wow.
college or out of college, right? And just to see them become amazing young adults. And I have some young adults, right, in college who, they've actually read parts of my book, and they're sending me pictures of the dinner they've made, with
Aw.
the fiber, and look at the vegetables, Dr. Song, and they'll say like, this is a Dr. Song meal. And so, I mean, it can be so rewarding. It can be heartbreaking at times, but it can be so rewarding.
Absolutely. My stepson was a horrible anxiety, horrible grades, crawling out of his skin. Minute we moved in together, all of us, I took out gluten, I took out dairy. You got him eating real foods, and within a month, his skin cleared up, his anxiety went away, his
Yeah.
grades started turning
Yeah, isn't
around.
that
Like he
amazing?
became a different kid, like
Yep.
boom, right
Yep.
in front of my eyes. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing about kids is they do usually when they turn a corner, they turn it fast.
Yes. I mean, typically much faster than adults because they don't have those, I mean, decades of garbage and toxic buildup, right? And so, it can be in that sense so rewarding.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, we're going to stop here. When we come back, I want to dive deeper into the microbiome and kids. I know you have a book out, I know you have supplements out, so we're going to hit all of that subject. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
There's a new word for wellness, Nikki. Nikki is your personal wellness companion, a sleek wearable device that lets you choose from a variety of programs to match your day. With a simple tap on the Nikki screen, you can explore wellness programs created for different moments and lifestyles. Need a lift? Select energy. Looking to unwind? Tap stress and anxiety. Want to feel more at ease? Choose pain. Heading out on a trip? Try travel to help you feel ready for new adventures. From busy mornings to quiet evenings, Nikki puts a variety of wellness experiences right at your fingertips and on your wrist. Life moves fast. Nikki moves with you. It's a portable way to bring wellness technology into your everyday routine, wherever life takes you. Your day, your choice, your wellness program. Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. We are Nikki.com.
Fantastic. Welcome back. I'm super excited to dig into the nuts and bolts of this topic because, like I said, I sometimes we just don't know what we don't know, and we can't ignore it anymore. Like the statistics have been put out there for so long now. Like I said, that Time magazine article came out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There's, the statistics of autism, of diabetes, of ADHD, and just how much more prevalent it is these days, even than 20 years ago. I mean, and I just don't understand why people aren't taking things more seriously and why there's still such a disconnection of what you put in your mouth matters.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about your book, about your supplements, about kind of the work that you do. I know you have kids yourself, right? How old are they?
I do. I do. So my kids now they're a little older. A lot of people think my kids are still in elementary school because the picture on my website is still them so young,
Oh,
but
funny.
but they don't necessarily want pictures anymore, so I have to respect that. So but they are now 16. Kenzie is driving now, which is a whole, I
Oh.
mean, a life-changing experience. And then Bodhi is 14 and a half, so they're freshmen and sophomores. And when I wrote my book, so my book came out in May of 2004. It's called Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, an integrated pediatrician's guide to whole child resilience. And it really, I wanted it to lay the foundation for parents and for practitioners of why we need to look at the microbiome in children, why your kid's microbiome lays the foundations for lifelong health in their brain and their immune system and their hormones and their metabolic system. I mean, everything. And so when we think about your child's microbiome, your 80% of your immune system lies in your gut. And for an infant, that means that the way that their microbiome shapes, especially in those first, 1,000 years, days of life, those first 3.5 years of life, their microbiota communicates with the immune cells in our gut and helps to train their immune system. Basically, getting a sense of, what should I tolerate or not? And if we think about our gut, we are one long hollow tube, all the way from our mouth down to where the poop comes out. And our inside, we think of it as the inside, but our gut is one of our largest, most important interfaces with our outside world. And so the way that our microbiome talks with our immune system determines, okay, are we going to consider this food a friend or foe? What about this allergen? What about this pathogen? What about this toxin? And it is the loss of microbiome health in infants that is directly correlated now with the rapid rise in loss of immune tolerance, which we now see as eczema, asthma, hay fever, and anaphylactic food allergies. So, when we think about one big study that came out in 2016, this is 10 years ago. When I first read the study, it seemed like, oh my gosh, I remember talking about the study in 2017, saying it's just from last year, and everybody should know about it. Now, 10 years from now, I'm like, okay, it's 10 years ago. Why doesn't everybody know about this, right? So, almost 800,000 infants. They looked at babies who received antibiotics or antacid medications in the first 6 months of life and found that those babies had almost a double risk, increased risk of virtually every single allergic disorder by the time they were 4. So
Dang.
that is astonishing and shocking, and we should know this. It's not to say that a baby shouldn't get antibiotics when it's absolutely necessary. And in fact, when you're little, I mean, both my babies, when they were 2 weeks and 5 weeks old, had antibiotics. One for UTI, one for a strep infection. But as an infant, those infections can get very serious very quickly. So, yes, do those antibiotics if they're appropriate. However, it is our responsibility as practitioners to then understand the unintended long-term consequences of those antibiotics and restore the gut microbiome and educate parents, right? I have so many parents who, once they know this information, like, oh my God, why didn't my doctor tell me? Or why didn't I know this? Right. And it's not their fault. And in fact, it's most doctors don't know this information because it's not taught in medical school. And the same thing with, as you mentioned, your stepson with ADD and anxiety. Once kids get out of that, kind of perpetual snotty phase where they're getting sick all the time, in preschool and elementary school years, it shifts. We as parents start worrying about mental health, right? With behavior, attention, anxiety, depression. And another really large study out of Finland looked at 1 million birth pairs, so infants, and looked at whether or not they received antibiotics in the early years of life, including whether they were exposed to antibiotics when they were inside their mother's womb, and found that infants who received antibiotics, as in those early years, had a significantly increased risk of developing, I mean, almost any mental health concern by the time they were older kids or adults, because your gut microbiome in those infant stages is growing rapidly, exploding just like their brains. And your gut microbiome influences how those brain connections are forming. When we think about the gut brain connection, and the communication between the gut and the brain is via the vagus nerve. Well, 80 to 90% of that communication occurs from the gut to the brain. So it shows you how important it is to really help optimize your child's microbiome. And so that for me was my passion and my calling to educate parents, educate practitioners about the science that has been around for a while, about the science that is exploding on why we need to really focus on the microbiome. And then, the other piece of it is, as a pediatrician, as a mom, it's really important for me to make sure whatever information I share is practical and doable and fun. So in the book, I talk about how to create microbiome magic every day, because this is an everyday thing, right? It is the microbiome-centric lifestyle that really all kids and adults should be living, but in a fun way, easily doable way that you can start, in baby steps. And then my goal is by the time kids leave your home, or if they're young adults already out of your home, that they learn how to care for their microbiome so that they can really optimally care for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. It was kind of sad because I tried to teach my son these things. I started going through FDN school when he was 9.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, some kids will rebel and they'll
Yep.
rebel against stupid stuff. And he rebelled against everything I taught him with his health stuff. And at the age of 21, he developed a freaking ulcer of all things. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like,
Yeah.
dude, you got to get back to square one. You've got to go back to the basics of what I know you know. Like, this is very loud yelling at you at the age of
Yep.
21. You should not have an ulcer, right? And
Nope.
and we do have a tendency to kind of get on poo-poo Western med, but they like you said, they don't know what they don't know. Most people don't realize they only get 8 hours of nutritional training throughout
Yeah.
their whole doctorate history. Like, wrap your brain around that. The very foundation of human health, they get 8 hours of training on.
Yeah. It is the foundation. It is the foundation. It's not just that food is medicine when you're sick. I think it was Mark Hyman who first said that food is information. I mean, food is the foundations of everything. And it's just like when I see, teenage now, I mean, my son obviously is a teenager now. What do a lot of teenagers want? They want to build more lean muscle, right? I'm like, what do you think you build muscle from? Right? It's not Doritos and Prime, hydration drinks, right? Like what ingredients in there is actually going to help build more lean muscle, right? And so, it's fascinating how people don't put that together, and yet when you think about, once you have your first car, like you wouldn't dream of putting like a lower quality gasoline in your car, right? You want the
That's
best
your baby,
quality. That's
absolutely.
right. Yeah. Or, if you have a garden, right? We all know, I mean, you're not going to get the juiciest, ripest tomatoes or the most beautiful rose bushes unless you feed the soil. Right. And so just, we want to have that kind of cognitive disconnect. We want to reconnect that and realize, well, we're just like, plants in the garden. Like we're not going to grow strong if we don't have, the ingredients to first nourish and grow, but also to keep out the weeds, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's such a beautiful analogy. Like, think of ourselves of a plant. What do we need? Water, sun, good food. And how many people aren't who are dehydrated,
That's right.
lack of vitamin D because they're not getting out in the sun and they're not eating real food. It's like,
Yeah.
get back to the basics, people.
Yeah. Well, and even as you're saying that too, I mean, you can put in the whole circadian rhythm, right? I mean, plants don't like perpetual sunlight, right? They need
Right.
like sun and dark and sun. So it's really we should take that metaphor. I mean, look in nature and see where, where things are thriving. Like that's what we want to model inside our bodies. And your microbiome is a very similar ecosystem. A lot of people think that the microbiome, they interchange um, the microbiome with microbiota and think, oh, your microbiome is all of those bugs that live in your gut. But that's only part of it. Your microbiota are those microorganisms, the bacteria and even yeast and viruses and parasites all living in there. Hopefully, we have a good mix of the ones that help keep us healthy. But it's also that the soil in there is that microbiome. And when we create a healthy ecosystem inside of our gut and create a healthy gut microbiome ecosystem, then it is so much easier for the beneficial bacteria, those probiotics, to want to come around and stick. And it also naturally repels pests, right? It repels, the abnormal bacteria or the parasites or the yeast that we really don't want in high number in our gut. So, really having kids thinking about, just as they learn to take care of the ecosystem outside of them by reducing, reusing, recycling, all the things, we want to apply that very same concept into our gut. And that's where, I talk to kids about, well, what do you want to get into your gut microbiome? How do you nourish that ecosystem? What do you nourish your microbiome with? And also, by the same token, the flip side of that is, what are those microbiome mischief makers that we really want to think about keeping out?
Absolutely. So, what are some of the symptoms, side effects, of a dysbiosis gut in a kid? Like a parent would be like, I have no idea if my kids, what their shape of their gut microbiome is. What are some of the symptoms that we can look for?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's really any symptom, like any
Mhm.
persistent chronic symptom, right? Because again, the gut immune system connection means that if your child has eczema, asthma, allergies, hives, that's not just an immune issue. There's something going on in their gut microbiome. If they have something going on with their nervous system, whether it's anxiety or sleep problems or behavioral concerns or OCD, I mean, you name it, that a brain symptom is a gut symptom because of that intimate connection between your gut and your brain, and also the fact that your gut is responsible for making a vast majority of neurotransmitters or brain chemicals that influence our temperament and our behavior, our cravings, even our IQ. And I mean, it may not necessarily be that those neurotransmitters made by our gut make it into the brain, but there's that signaling that occurs through the vagus nerve that is so important. Even hormones, right? We know this in the adult world, and when we're thinking about perimenopause, your gut microbiota have a very similar liver detoxification system, a cytochrome P450, detoxification system as our own liver. And that is responsible for making sure that our hormones get, quote, detoxified appropriately so that we're not reabsorbing, the more harmful estrogens. And it's same thing applies for boys and with testosterone and progesterone also goes through the same process. And so anytime there's a hormonal imbalance, I mean, let's say girls with really bad PCOS, I'm seeing more and more kids with PCOS problems, more and more girls with horrible period cramps. And of course, the skin, right? That is just not really where they want it to be. And so if they're having any hormonal issues, then you have to look at the gut. So that would be, gut dysbiosis is, can be not having enough of the beneficial bacteria It can be having too many abnormal pathogens in your gut. And sometimes it's a combination of both. We don't have enough of the good guys and we have too many of the bad guys. And that is a separate phenomena than leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability, which has been linked with many, many, many chronic health, pediatric health concerns in the literature. But when you have gut dysbiosis, that can often be a trigger for leaky gut, and vice versa. If you have a leaky gut, let's say something um, let's say you had a stomach flu, or not even a stomach. Let's take a cold, right? A flu-like illness. Well, guess what? When you have a flu, whenever you have an illness, your gut does become a little bit more permeable, but that also sets the stage for gut dysbiosis, and so they tend to go hand in hand, which is why when I walk my patients through my gut reset protocol, which I wrote about in the book, so that parents and kids could follow that even if they don't have a functional practitioner to help work with them. um, it really is, how do we reset the gut so that we clear the dysbiosis, clear the leaky gut, and not only that, we create a resilient microbiome so that things don't just slide right back.
Absolutely. It's said in, functional medicine often that no matter how common a symptom may be, it's never normal, right? It's always your body's check engine light coming on, saying something there's going on in here.
Yep.
And so that's no different with your kids. And it's like that frog on the stove in the pot analogy where we've just slowly turned up the heat over all
Yeah.
these years and we're slowly cooking ourselves to death. We don't even realize it. So, oh, he's just got allergies or oh, he blah 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 blah. No, that's a sign that something's
Yep.
not right. You need to dig deeper.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, even, I mean, what do we say? There's a saying like, but the buttery soft skin of your baby, or like smooth as a baby's bottom, right? Like, so like babies should have soft, like clear skin. And it is not very common that I see a baby that has completely clear, smooth, like, baby skin, right? So many babies have rough skin that really it's a subtle sign that, hey, there's, even if it's not outright eczema, there's something going on. Like, why is this baby's skin not as smooth as they should be, right? Why is this baby wheezing every time they get a cold? What is going on here? Let's not just chalk it up to common being normal, because it's not.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're getting to the end here. We're getting to the shameless plug. Oh, before we get to that, I know you've got a new baby launching.
I
Speaking of babies,
Yeah,
speaking of
it's
babies, you got
my
a new baby
fourth
launching.
baby.
Tell us a little
So,
bit about what you got.
yeah. So, in the book, I talk about microbiome champions, and these are the three F's: are fiber, phytonutrients, which I know is a PH, but it sounds like an F, and and fermented foods, right? So, our microbiome champions, like, we want to get that solid foundation in of fiber, because less than 5% of US kids and adults get the daily recommended fiber requirements. Phytonutrients, or color, because 8 in 10 Americans has a phytonutrient gap in every single color of the food rainbow, right? And fermented foods, because that's really in America not a very common thing, especially among kids, right? And we know from the literature that those ingredients are the foundations to nourish your microbiome. And from the American Gut Project, which looked at 11,000 stool samples, we also know that the goal to try to reach in terms of the minimum number of different plants, because all those microbiome champions are plant-based foods. So the minimum number of plants we want to try to strive for each week is 30 plants. And some parents will look at me like, oh my gosh, there's no way. Right. Other parents like, well, actually, I just, in my salad, let's see, I had kale, I had some carrots and cucumbers and tomatoes, some butternut squash. Threw in some turmeric on there. So that's 6 plants right there, because spices and herbs count, right?
Mm,
So, but 30 plus plants is the goal. So, recognizing that in this day and age, it's very challenging to get in those microbiome foundations. And so our kids have microbiome gaps, just like they have lots of nutritional gaps. I spent the last 3 years trying to find the perfect manufactured to make my fourth baby, which is called Microbiome Magic. So Microbiome Magic, I don't know if you can see it,
Yep.
right? It is an all-in-one daily essential superfood powder for kids and their microbiomes. So completely bioavailable, methylated B vitamins, chelated minerals, multivitamin, multimineral mix. So that way we can meet your kids' nutritional gaps because most kids need a little more zinc or a little more magnesium. And then also your microbiome champions. So specialty prebiotics and fibers to help nourish your child's gut microbiome. There's a 10 berry fermented fruit blend to give your
Wow.
postbiotic power, and um, a mixture of 30 different organic fruits, vegetables, and phytonutrients. So it's basically all of the microbiome champions for your kids in one scoop that they can have every day. And we debuted this at the Integrative Healthcare Symposium in New York last month, as we're speaking right now. And the feedback was amazing. I mean, practitioners were like, oh my gosh, my kids are totally going to have this. This is so good. It's delicious. There's no added sugar, no artificial sweeteners. It has a berry lemonade flavor. It's easy to mix. It's easy to use. So anyhow, my wish is that if we get kids on this and they have this foundation of microbiome resilience,
Wait, not if, when.
when, yes,
When,
mindset
not
shift.
if.
When kids can have that foundation of microbiome resilience, we can help to roll back a lot of their chronic health concerns. We can help prevent a lot of new ones from starting. And the foundation starts with your microbiome champions. So I'm hoping well, when Microbiome Magic launches out to the world, which it will be by the time this podcast airs, we will have a growing number of kids who are now walking towards health instead of poor health and disease.
Absolutely. So make sure to go to the show notes to find out more information on how to get in contact with her and to find her book and to find her supplements. Also, make sure to go to wearenikki.com/podcast, enter in BioBeats to get 10% off. And because we really love our customers, the way we show appreciation is by giving away a free Nikki device plus a 1 year membership to the wellness store once a month. So make sure to go to the show notes to enter. Good luck. Oh my gosh, how am I reading May's winner already? How has it gotten to be June? It's crazy. But without further ado, the winner of the free Nikki and a year's worth of wellness store, Amy Reed. Let's congratulate Amy Reed. Woohoo! You are the winner for May. And those of you who didn't win, don't give up. Don't get too sad. I know it's sad. It's heartbreaking. But there will be a new winner every month, so keep listening, keep sharing. Join us every week for another amazing episode of Bioenergetics Beat. Thank you for joining us and have a healthy day.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health.
It looks like a little watch, but it's actually a frequency device. It's bioenergetic, so it has this little frequency light situation that goes into your arm.
This is my Nikki. It is a bioenergetic wearable that works by emitting a specific frequency carried by a red light, as you can see on the back. It's aimed at enhancing the body's natural healing process to improve wellness and reducing stress, pain, and inflammation. And to select a frequency, you tap it to wake it up, and then you slide to the screens that list the different frequencies. I have wellness or Lyme on mine. So if we want to pick one, we just tap on it, and you'll see the circles around, and there's a play button, play areas, tap there, and you can see the colors radiating that show that it's playing. And you would also see the red light on the back. And to stop, you just tap it again, and then you can slide and select a different frequency. I'm going to play afternoon. And you just tap, and away you go for your afternoon.
So they're two different things. You have the Nikki device, and then you have the frequency sets. And so right now they have the wellness set of frequencies, and they are absolutely incredible. So I absolutely love them.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency-enhanced health. wearenikki.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.